There are so many comments like this on my last video, and honestly, I'm shocked. As a proud North Carolinian, I know so much about the Lost Colony, and I would love to tell you about it. The Lost Colony at Roanoke, present-day North Carolina, was the first attempted permanent settlement by the English in the New World. Keep in mind, this was not the first permanent settlement in the New World. The Spanish and the Portuguese had actually beat the British by some 50, 60, 70 years out to the Caribbean and Central America and South America. The first permanent settlement in what is today the United States is St. Augustine, and that is in Florida, up near the Jacksonville area. St. Augustine was founded in the year 1565, and then the Lost Colony of Roanoke was founded in 1587. A big reason why the English start to explore the New World is because of this guy, Sir Walter Raleigh. And yes, that is who North Carolina's capital city of Raleigh is named after. Raleigh was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I, who was the Queen of England from 1558 to 1603. I believe he was primarily focused on setting up trading posts in the New World, and Raleigh's persuasions of Queen Elizabeth I are one of the major reasons that England gets involved in exploring the quote-unquote New World. He goes and explores from what is present-day North Carolina all the way down to Florida, and he names the region Virginia in honor of Queen Elizabeth I, who never married and therefore was known as the Virgin Queen. Interestingly enough, though, if you are familiar with U.S. geography, you'll know that the present-day state of Virginia is to the north of North Carolina. So Sir Walter Raleigh named that region Virginia, but it did not include the present-day state of Virginia, if that makes sense. After exploring the region and naming it in honor of Queen Elizabeth, he convinces her to send a delegation of 117 colonists to what is now known as the present-day Outer Banks in North Carolina. So I'm sure we've all heard, especially around this time of year with Thanksgiving happening, that the Mayflower came over and they were the Pilgrims and they set up a colony in Massachusetts Bay. And yes, they did. But that was 25 years after the attempted settlement of Roanoke. And I say attempted because it did not last. This is also about 20 years before the settlement of Jamestown, which was the first successful permanent English settlement in the New World. So the colonists of Roanoke land 1587, and they realize pretty quickly, like within a couple of months, we are in over our heads. We need a lot more supplies. We need a lot more people. And we need to get those supplies and people from England. In that colony, a little girl named Virginia Dare is born, and she is the first English baby to be born in the Americas. Her first name being Virginia is obviously fitting, with this being the region that Sir Walter Raleigh has named in honor of Queen Elizabeth. And on the flip side of that, in the present day, the county where the Outer Banks are is named Dare County in honor of Virginia Dare. Dare County, and specifically the town of Kitty Hawk in Dare County, is also where Wilbur and Orville Wright first tested their airplane. The leader of the Roanoke colony is John White, and he goes back to England to get the necessary supplies and people and funding. But while he's there, war breaks out between Britain and Spain, and Queen Elizabeth presses every single available vessel into military service in order to try to defeat the Spanish Armada. Ellie decided to reposition during that last take. So what that means for John White is that a journey that was supposed to take only a couple months ends up taking 3 years for him to get back to the Roanoke colony. So during those 3 years, the colonists have to fend for themselves. They don't know that there's a war going on with Spain. They don't know if John White's ship ever made it back to England. So they've got to go based on the information that they do have and try to survive as best they can. When John White finally is able to make it back to Roanoke, he is very shocked at what he finds, because ain't nobody left in Roanoke. No signs of life, no living things, no clues left behind except for one, which I think is a pretty big one. But within the walls of the colony, there is the word Croatoan carved into a tree. Before he had left for England, John White had instructed the colonists that if they had to leave and relocate, that they would carve their destination along with a cross into a tree or somewhere else that could be easily found. And when John White finds the word Croatoan carved into the tree, there is not any sort of cross anywhere near it. There is also another tree that just has the letters CRO carved into it, again without a cross. Croatoan most likely referred to an island, which was the home of the Croatan tribe and was not very far from where the colonists had set up camp. Now, this was a pretty friendly tribe that John White and the other colonists had gotten along with before White had left and gone back to England. White and his team end up having to go back to their ships because of a storm, and the next morning there's 2 ships that go out and they're going to try to find the colonists again, thinking maybe they did go to another island. Maybe they're still here. If you've ever been to North Carolina in the summer, this was in August, by the way, you have probably experienced one of our good old North Carolina coastal storms. And given that this was hurricane season, it very easily could have been a tropical storm or even a hurricane. Nevertheless, White tries to go back to find the colonists the next morning, and the Encyclopedia of Virginia puts it this way. One ship lost her anchor and almost ran aground, while the captain of the other ship convinced the always pliable White to head for the Caribbean instead. White never returned to Roanoke. He died 3 years later, either in England or on one of Sir Walter Raleigh's Irish estates. So that means that the only Englishman who was familiar with this region, who could have possibly navigated with any degree of certainty around this region, just leaves, and he never comes back. One reason this is such an interesting decision to me is because Virginia Dare, who I mentioned earlier, the first English child born in the Americas, is John White's granddaughter. And his daughter, who is Eleanor White Dare, is still in the colony. The day that John White and his crew make it back to Roanoke is actually Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday. How's that for a coincidence? And so, one of the great mysteries of the United States is born. For more than 400 years, people have been asking, what happened to the lost colony? There are several theories on this, and interestingly enough, all of them have some degree of evidence supporting them. And there is one that I think is more credible than others, and I have already made and posted a second video going into what those theories are and which one I personally believe is most likely accurate. Since I have a few extra days with no new content coming at you from my classes, since we're on Thanksgiving break, I thought it might be beneficial to go into a little bit of a deep dive on how each of the different colonies were founded in North America and why they were so different from each other. So keep a lookout for those videos in the next couple of days. And as always, let me know what questions you have in the comments, and I'll do my very best to answer them. I'll see you next time.